Welcome back to another reading from one of my books. Today I'm going to be reading Patches of Bookstore Cat. Now, this is a story for children, so if you have children or if you're a child by heart, please bring them in and have them listen to this one. This is a nice little story. Again, one of my favorites. That's kind of how I choose these. So this is from A Glimpse of My Shorts. And towards the back of the animal ones. Got my tea, got my little companion here, so I think we're ready to start. Hello, I'd like to introduce you to a friend of mine. Her name is Patches and she lives in a bookstore. Oh, she is also a cat. If you walk into the bookstore, we will see many shelves of books, stacks of National Geographics piled on the floor, rows of paperbacks, and in the back, a desk. Behind the desk is Carol, who owns and runs the bookstore. And behind her is Eric, sitting on a stuffed green comfortable chair coloring. Eric is 8 and has been helping his mother for a long time. Now look to your right on top of the desk. Do you see her? A nice cat. A cat whose coat has many colors. A cat with dignity and with a welcoming purr. This is Patches, and she is very glad to meet you. The bookstore didn't always have a cat. There's a story about how Patches came to live at the bookstore and how she became the bookstore cat. And that is the story that I want to tell you. Picture the bookstore on a rainy afternoon. Excuse me. There we go. All day the clouds had been joining with each other and blocking out the sky. They were dark and angry clouds and had been grumbling since early in the morning. Now they were tossing lightning and firing their cannons. As the sky grew first green and then darkened as if the clouds had thrown a thick blanket over the town, they decided the time was right to let down the water, and let it down they did. They threw it down by the bucket loads, and clouds have very large buckets. It rained so hard that nobody went out into the street, and so nobody had come into the store almost all day. Eric colored page after page of paper and then folded them into paper airplanes and flew them onto the bookshelves. Carol sat and read or walked into the big window at the front and watched the clouds gather and open up to let loose the rain. Eric sat up on his chair and stopped coloring. He had heard something. Something soft and quiet that could just barely be heard mixed in with the rain and thunder. It was a small cry that came from somewhere outside. Somewhere outside and out back of the bookstore. He told his mother and she listened and heard it too. She carefully undid the lock on the back door and slowly opened it so as not to scare whatever was behind it. There on the ground and dripping wet was a very sad cat. They left the door open and waited. Cat looked up at Carol and then at Eric. They didn't move, but just waited. The cat decided that it was silly to sit out in the cold and rain when the bookstore was warm, dry, and very nice. It walked inside and jumped onto the chair Eric had been sitting on. It shook itself dryer and then lay down. Carol found a box and put a warm blanket into it. She sent Eric out into the rain to the store down the street with a list of things the cat might need. Food, of course, cat box and litter, and maybe some treats. Eric grumbled about going out into the rain. Well, you would too, I bet. But he did go and got everything on the list. When he got back, he was given some money to go to the ice cream store on the corner for a brownie hot fudge sundae. Sitting back onto his chair and eating his sundae, he watched the cat eat, stretch, and wander around the store. Are we going to keep her? He asked. His mom looked at the cat as she answered. Well, she is going to have kittens soon, so I guess she'll have to stay. If the cat was going to stay, she would have to have a name, and this would require very careful thought. A cat gets very offended if they are given a name they don't like. Many names were suggested to the cat: Whiskers, Miss Friss, Pussy Permew, lots of others, all of which the cat turned down. Carol looked carefully at the cat and said Eric. "I don't know what to call her. She's covered in all these multicolored patches." At the word patches, the cat looked up and meowed. She had chosen her name, and from then on she was called Patches. Now, no two cats are alike and all act differently. It didn't take long for Carol and Derek to see how different Patches was to other cats. For instance, even though she would eat cat food, it wasn't her favorite thing to eat. She preferred potato chips or maybe an egg roll or even pizza. She loved olive juice and would even roll in it if she could. Along with the cat, the bookstore also had mice. But these mice were also different than other mice. They lived under a table in a small hole in the wall. They lived on potato chips and small biscuits. They were allowed to live there because they never ate the books and stayed in their hole most of the time. Once in a while, one would climb onto the desk and clamber into the chips, grab one and bring it down into their hole in the wall. Lucky for the mice, Patches realized quickly that these mice were friends and were not to be eaten. Every morning after Patches became part of the bookstore, she would greet Carol when she opened it in the morning. She would have breakfast, then sit at the front window, and sometimes she would sleep. But when customers came in, she always greeted them and let them pet her and make a fuss over her. She was always either in the window or on the desk. Eventually, the time came and Patches had her kittens. She had 6 of them, and all different colors. One was all black, one tortoiseshell color, one brown, one white, one brown and one black, and black and white, and one with all the colors her mom had. This last one also had the puffiest tail you could ever see. The kittens were small and stayed near their mother in the beginning, but kittens grow quickly, and were no longer content to sit at their mother's side. They wanted to explore. After they started wandering, you never knew where you might find a kitten. One might be in the window, one on the desk, one underfoot, and one over your head. You might pull out a book and see 2 shiny eyes looking at you. You might sit in the leather chair in front of the desk for a chat or to read a new book you found, and soon you would feel a small animal climbing your pants to sit in your lap and help you read. Carol and her family quickly became fond of one of the kittens. I think you already guessed which one. It was the one with the fluffy tail, and they named her Scamper. Patches and Scamper stayed at the bookstore, and all the others found new homes. For a while, Patches and Scamper made everyone who came into the bookstore feel welcomed. They would rub against them and purr, 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 saying, "Welcome to our store." Or they would sit on your lap, or they would lay on the desk and allow you to pet them. They made the bookstore a wonderful place to work and to come to. Sometime much later, the bookstore closed. The books were packed off the shelves and placed into many boxes. All the shelves were moved to Carol's home and the books taken up to the attic or placed on the shelves all around the house. But what about Patches and Scamper, I hear you cry? Well, they came home with Carol too. They lived in a house now and spent all the day on the windowsill or climbing bookshelves or sitting in someone's lap. They missed the bookstore just like everyone who lived there, but they enjoyed being in a nice cozy home and part of a family now. One day, Patches and Scamper made a new friend. He was a squirrel named Blackjaw who came to the house every day for breakfast. But I'll tell you about him in one of my next stories. So that was Patches the Bookstore Cat from A Glimpse of My Shorts.